Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Do You Believe? Can Ouija boards actually summon spirits or demons? We've all heard the stories of apparitions and malevolent entities making their way into this world via the board. Well, the next few stories I have for you are true occurrences of people who committed crimes and were said to be influenced by the Ouija board. On March 7, 1930, Clotilda Marchand answered the door of her Buffalo home in New York and found an unfamiliar Native American woman on her doorstep. In broken English, the woman accused her of being a witch and then attacked her with a hammer. Finally, she stuffed a chloroform-soaked rag down Clotilda's throat. A short time later, her body was found by her 12-year-old son. Witnesses saw the killer scoping out the house, and Clotilda's husband, the sculptor Henry Marchand, pointed the police toward one of his models, a cynical woman named Leila Jemerson. She and 66-year-old Nancy Bowen, the actual killer, were arrested on the night of the murder. Soon, the complicated murder plot came to light. In fall of 1929, Jemerson and Bowen were using a Ouija board in an effort to contact the spirit of Bowen's recently deceased husband, Sassafras Charlie. Through the Ouija board, Sassafras Charlie apparently said that he was murdered by a woman named Clotilda and gave her address and description. After the seance, Bowen began receiving letters from a mysterious Mrs. Dooley explaining that Clotilda was actually a witch and had placed a hex on Sassafras Charlie because she was jealous of his healing powers. When the hex didn't work, Clotilda just killed him. The letter also indicated that Bowen might be Clotilda's next victim. Of course, all of this was coming from Jemerson. Henry Marchand claimed that Jemerson was infatuated with him and had plotted to kill his wife out of jealousy. However, Jemerson's lawyers said that she and Henry were actually having an affair, and it was Henry who had orchestrated his wife's death. Jemerson was acquitted of the crime, while Bowen pled guilty and was released on time served. As for Henry, he moved to Albany and married his murdered wife's 18-year-old niece within the year. On Christmas Eve 2014, Paul Carroll was using a Ouija board in his home in Consett County, Durham, United Kingdom. According to Carroll, he was trying to contact the dead when an evil spirit entered the family dog, Molly. Carroll, who has learning disabilities, then drowned the dog and dismembered her body. Afterward, he dumped the body in an outside drain, causing it to back up. When workers were brought in to fix the drain, they discovered the dog's body. Meanwhile, neighbors who heard the story reported Carroll to the police. He was arrested and charged for causing the dog unnecessary suffering. Carroll pled guilty and received a suspended sentence, but the story took an even stranger turn in January of 2015. Just a week after her husband's guilty plea, Carroll's wife Margaret and his stepdaughter Katrina were using the same Ouija board when it apparently told them that they were going to die. The next day, the mother and daughter took some prescription drugs and then set their house on fire in an apparent suicide attempt. Both women were hospitalized but survived. Luckily, no one else was hurt, even though there were explosive gas canisters in the house. Both Margaret and Katrina were arrested for arson and given 4 years in prison. On the night of February 11, 2001, 53-year-old grandmother Carol Sue Elvaker was using a Ouija board with her daughter Tammy Roach and Tammy's 2 daughters. While playing in their home in Mensa, Oklahoma, Elvaker apparently received a message from God through the Ouija board informing her that her son-in-law, 34-year-old Brian Roach, was evil and needed to be killed. So Elvaker grabbed a knife and stabbed the former mayor of Mensa, who had won the election by 8 votes when he was just 19, in his sleep. He called out for help, but Elvaker and Tammy Roach did nothing. allowing him to bleed to death. After stabbing her son-in-law, Elvaker tried to stab Tammy's 10-year-old daughter, but Tammy wrestled the knife from her mother and hid it in the house. Then Elvaker, Roach, and her 2 daughters piled into a car with Elvaker driving. That proved to be a bad idea, since Elvaker soon tried to kill everyone in the car by running into a road sign. However, she only ended up breaking both of her own ankles and slightly injuring the other passengers. Elvaker then got out of the car and tried to push one of her granddaughters into traffic, apparently believing that she had inherited Brian's evil. After failing to kill her granddaughter, Elvaker ran from the scene, even though both of her ankles were broken. She stripped off her clothes and hid in the forest, but was soon arrested by authorities. What's really odd about the case is that Elvaker had no history of mental problems. Drugs and alcohol were not involved, and investigators couldn't find any evidence of domestic problems in the home. Elvaker was ruled insane and committed to a psychiatric hospital. Tammy was also charged, but the case was later dropped. On December 2nd, 1995, 17-year-old Michael Mccullen and his 16-year-old friend Pierre Antoine lured 2 15-year-olds, Michael Eridge and Stephen Curran, back to Mccullen's flat in London, England. The room, which was described as a shrine to Satan, had a Ouija board. While the 4 teenagers were using it, the board suddenly spelled out the word kill. When Eldridge tried to leave, Antoine prevented him from doing so, eventually striking him. Things took a turn for the worse when Mccullen pulled out a foot-long combat knife and used it to stab Eridge 11 times in the neck and chest, while Curran watched on in horror. It was believed that Mccullen murdered Eridge in an attempt to make a sacrifice to Satan. Mccullen, who had unsuspected mental problems, accepted a plea of manslaughter due to his diminished responsibility and was sentenced to an unlimited term at Broadmoor Mental Hospital. In December of 2007, 16-year-old Joshua Tukith and 15-year-old Donald Shalchin asked the Ouija board if they should become serial killers. They then asked who would be their first victim, and the board spelled out, Mom. It was wrong. On the night of December 19th, the pair were drinking alcohol and cough syrup in Shao Chin's home. While they were hanging out, Shao Chin's 13-year-old sister, Elizabeth Shao Chin, was talking on the phone. Out of nowhere, Tucker took a knife and stabbed her once in the throat. The 2 teenage boys then hid the body and tried to clean up the blood. When Donald's mother, 41-year-old Lori Shao Chin, went looking for her daughter, Tucker attacked her as well. She managed to call 911, but police did not respond in time. When Tucker's knife broke, Donald gave Tucker a dumbbell and a butcher knife to finish off his mother. Lori died on her way to the hospital. After the murder, the 2 young men who were covered in blood got into a car and tried to flee. They were arrested a short time later. Shao Chin was given 9.5 years in prison, while Tucker was given a 41-year sentence. So there you have 5 terrifying crimes connected to Ouija boards. Thank you for joining me again on Do You Believe, and I welcome you to join me for the next interesting episode. As always, take care out there.